Okay, looks like everybody from the waiting room is in the meeting now.
Okay, great. Oh, maybe one more?
Looks like we're all together now.
We're good now.
All right, perfect. All right. Well, thanks everybody for your time this afternoon. I appreciate everyone's willingness to get together. I hope everybody can hear me okay and can see my screen. Let me know if you can't. I do want to say a special thank you today to the school leaders who have provided some initial feedback. We'll talk a little bit about that toward the end of the presentation. And I want to say thank you to our friends at Basis Policy Research and Mississippi First, who have both weighed in on the recommendations that we have for the renewal application and guidance. And so I'm hoping that as we go through today's presentation, some of the questions that you have for clarity, I hope that we'll be able to answer some of those throughout the presentation. I'm getting a little feedback, so if everybody can make sure they're on mute, that would be helpful. Okay. All right. Well, as always, we begin all of our presentations with the mission, and the mission. Yeah.
Lisa, do you want me to actually call everything to order?
Yeah. Sorry
Or you
about
go
that.
ahead?
Nope. You go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I am Erin Meyer, Chair of the Applications Committee of the Mississippi Charter School Authorizer Board. This meeting is being held today, Thursday, April 16th, 2026 at 1:30 p.m. The notice of this meeting, which included the date, time, place, and purpose, and identified the attendance available to the public, has been posted. Minutes of this meeting will be recorded. This meeting is being called to order at 1:34 p.m. on Thursday, April 16th, 2026. As I call the names of the committee members, please state the location of your presence for this meeting. Erin Meyer, I am present in Madison, Mississippi. Candace Robbins.
Present in Jackson, Mississippi.
Okay, and then Marcy Scoggins is not with us. And then just noting that our charter board chair, Candace Hunt, I believe, is online as well. Will you just let us know your location, Candace?
Yes, I'm present in Tupelo, Mississippi.
Okay, thank you. Okay, a quorum is present for conducting this meeting. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Please identify yourself for the record.
I so move Candace Robbins.
Okay, and I'll second that, Erin Meyer. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Our next order of business is new business, consideration of the proposed changes to the renewal application and guidance. And now at this point, I will turn it over to Dr. K to go through this.
Okay, I think I was ready to get going. I had everything teed up and I was ready, so sorry about that, Erin. Okay, so back to where we were going to talk just about our mission that we always begin with. And our mission is just to increase access to excellent public schools by authorizing only high quality charter schools, particularly those that are designed to expand opportunities for the underserved student. So I want to start with a little renewal history. We have new board members and operators that have not yet been through a renewal application cycle. And so I want to share a little about the application cycle and its history. Back in September of 2019, staff received the renewal application and guidance from the vendor who had developed that application and guidance for us. The board then approved the policy later that month. So that was in September of 2019. Then the first set of renewals began that same month for the first 2 operators who had opened their schools in 2015. And SchoolWorks had actually been contracted to conduct the 2-day school quality reviews for those 2 schools. And then shortly thereafter, MCSAB engaged in its first authorizer evaluation with NACSA. And in that evaluation, NACSA focused on 2 of our primary practices, one of which was our performance framework, and 2 was the renewal process. Both received some significant recommendations from NACSA for revisions to, and both were revised then as a result of that and approved during the next couple of years. And then, of course, COVID came in 2020 and impacted both of those policies and practices. Then during the 22-23 renewal cycle, we used an internal reviewer again and renewed 3 schools, with peer noting in their report some challenges to the renewal policy. And then the following years, we used a different vendor, but the same policy and the same practices. But those renewals did not elicit any recommendations or comments from peer. And then the next renewal cycle begins this fall for 2 of our schools. So why change the renewal process? Well, because again, we took seriously the recommendations from peer. We took seriously the comments from our schools and our leaders, and we began reviewing and researching and revising our process nearly 2 years ago. So we reviewed other states. We looked at NACSA's recommendations, and we took into consideration our own experiences and the context in which we live, and we drafted and edited the renewal application guidance to do several things: to ensure clarity, to ensure alignment to best practices, to increase transparency for our stakeholders and the public, to reduce the administrative burdens on our schools. We wanted to eliminate duplicative information that could only be captured or could be captured somewhere else and not have the schools have to do that. So we also wanted to create predictability, and we want to just make sure that our application for renewal is simple, it's predictable, and it's legally sound. So the law states that in making each charter school renewal decision, that the authorizer, board members, must 1, ground your decision in evidence of the school's performance over time, over the performance of the charter contract in accordance with the framework that's set forth in the contract. It also requires you ensure the data is available to the school and to the public, and then that we provide a public report that summarizes the evidence that is the basis for the renewal decision. So in essence, the questions we're asking are simple. Is the school successful academically? Is it physically sound? Is it a viable organization that meets the conditions that are found in the organizational framework? And finally, then, if it is renewed, what are those future plans going to look like? Are they realistic? Are they reasonable? And are they achievable? So the law also speaks to terms and conditions with respect to renewal. A charter may be renewed for successive 5-year terms of duration, not longer, and the authorizer may grant renewal with specific conditions for improvements and may lessen the term based on the performance, that demonstrated capacities and particular circumstances of each of the charter schools. So on this slide, I want to call your attention to the timeline, which is laid out in statute. It is includes the notification deadlines to the school and the comprehensive 90-day process. This chart here in timeline is nearly identical to what we have had in previous cycles, with the only difference being that the school actually has 90 days to submit a correction or clarification to the report, the comprehensive report, before previous iterations of this document had, I believe, 14 days. So that the law says 90 days. I don't think it'll take a school 90 days to respond to our comprehensive report, but the law allows them to have that 90-day period to do so. So before September 30th, we have to notify the school, are you eligible or not? There are conditions within the law that would not allow a school to be eligible for a renewal. If that school is rated an F in its final 4th year of operation prior to its 5th year, it's not eligible based on statute. Then before September 30th, we as the authorizer have to send to the schools a performance report along with charter renewal application guidance. So we have to release that ahead of time. And we do that every year before September 30th. What happens, sometimes we have to notify and say, we don't have that rating yet from the Department of Education. So pending the ratings, at this point, you're eligible, right? So we have to massage that a little bit depending on what the timing is on the release from the State Department of Education. Then what I was alluding to earlier, the school then can submit right away or have up to 90 days to respond to any corrections or clarifications in the report that we submit to them. Then no later than January 31st, the school submits their full application for charter renewal. In turn, we do a 14-day window of a completeness check, and there's no substantive review. So all we're looking for at that point in time is, did they submit what they were supposed to submit? Then within 45 days of that application's submission, we and/or our external evaluators will perform a site visit or a desk audit. Then within 60 days, we'll have the application review and a draft renewal recommendation is delivered to the schools. Remember, this window, this 90-day window is comprehensive. So all those numbers, all those dates are built into that 90-day period of time. Then you've got school response to the draft renewal recommendation, and that they have a 2-week window to do that. And then the final board vote on recommendations is again within that 90-day period. And then a school, if they are non-renewed, they can request a public hearing, and that has to happen within 30 days of the request. So should we receive one for something like that, then we would go through the process of ensuring that the school has an opportunity to provide feedback and ask questions during a public hearing. So I'll pause there for any questions from the committee. Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to the next slide. So again, I just referenced this, but this is statutory. Before September 30, we have to issue the charter school performance report to any school whose charter expires the following year. That report has to summarize their performance record to date. This is a requirement under the statute and included in the charter contract. And on the previous slide, I referenced this, but the authorizer may not renew the charter of any school that during its final operating year is designated an F under the state's accountability accreditation rating system. So also clearly outlined in the law is exactly what the application guidance must provide at a minimum. In order for the school to have an opportunity to share beyond what they get in the performance report and the performance framework, then all the schools must have an opportunity to provide additional data, evidence beyond that that's contained in the report. Schools are also given an opportunity to describe any improvements that they've undertaken already or that they have planned for the next term. And then finally, schools can detail their plans for the next charter term. You know, what we found really interesting was our previous iterations of the application had a lot of stuff in it that was a little redundant, and really didn't align directly to what the statute said when it came to the application. So we tried very hard to reduce some of that redundancy and make sure that what we are sharing with the schools is really based on what the statute says. So one note here on item A is just to say that additional evidence doesn't mean to the schools to say, well, here's what we think and feel about our school, how it performed, or what we think about the accountability model, or what the context of our community is. This is just an opportunity for the schools to provide evidence to share information beyond that of which was included in the framework or the comprehensive report. So additionally, the charter renewal application guidance must include or refer to explicitly the criteria that will guide the authoriser's renewal decision. It has to be based on the performance framework that is set forth in the charter contract and consistent with the chapter. The contract terms found in 5.1 under performance and accountability, you'll see a different word there that comes up often and some questions around based on versus primarily. But the contract term says for purposes of contract renewal and revocation decisions and other evaluations of the school's performance, the authorizer will rely primarily on the performance standards that are set forth in the framework. And so we want to make sure that our renewal application is built on the performance framework and inclusive of the contract and, of course, consistent with the law. So what's new then in the process? This new application, proposed renewal application, eliminates the decision matrix. If you recall, there was a decision matrix in the old form. It eliminates that. So it eliminates vague and confusing language within the matrix and the application. I alluded to the peer report earlier. The peer report referenced this. It was confusing and it did need to be cleaned up. And so this new document is our effort to do just that. It also eliminates the application as a primary source of evidence for renewal. It eliminates the need for a rubric, which will help to reduce subjectivity, and the application will then become secondary, supplemental to support the renewal recommendation. It also ensures performance over time is the primary source that's used in decision making, and it aligns the framework ratings to the criteria and the term length. So what else is new then? There is a significant reduction in the number of questions in the application. It includes an exception for schools that are meeting or exceeding ratings on the framework across all years and all components. And so those schools that meet those conditions will only have to submit the narrative, their future plans, and their budget. So it eliminates all those questions built into the application for schools that don't meet that condition. And then it's clear and specific outcomes that are based on, again, performance over time. The full 5-year term renewal, you can have a full 5-year term conditional renewal. You could receive a 3-year conditional renewal or a non-renewal. So section 5.18 is an additional contract reference that relates directly to the framework. And I want to call that out because it's important as it aligns not only to the application, but to the performance framework and renewal. So it's all built in there together. Meets or exceeds expectation standards are the desired rating for all indicators, for every sub-indicator and overall annual designation on the framework. And a rating of less than meets or exceeds may result in an intervention as provided in the intervention ladder section of the performance framework. The specific terms, form, and requirements of the framework, including indicators, measures, metrics, and targets required by the applicable state and federal accountability requirements, are determined by the authorizer and are binding on the school's governing board by virtue of the contract. So our next slide here is going to, Letitia's going to walk you through how the new ratings work, what they look like, and what schools might expect during the new renewal cycle. So Letitia, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'll put myself on mute and if I can.
Okay, all right. Well, good afternoon. So we'll talk about interpreting the ratings. And with the academic rating conversion, you have an exceeds where you can earn 4 points, meets 3 points, approaches 2 points, and fails 1. With the financial rating conversion, meets is a 3 points, approaches is 2 points, fails is 1. Organization rating conversion, meets is 3 points, approaches is 2 points, and fails is 1 point. So in table A, this is an example of an annual performance rating. And so our domains, we're looking at academics, financial, and organizations. These are the same metrics that are on your performance framework. And we're looking at here in this example, we have years 1 through 4. So in year 1 for academics, we have a 4. And we know looking at our rating conversion that a 4 is exceed. So in year 1, let's say in this example, the school scored a 4 for year 1 in academics, and we're going to go horizontal. In year 2, the school scored a 3. In year 3, for academics, there is a 3, and for year 4, there is a 3. Now, to total this up, we will take year 1, the 4, year 2, we'll add the 3, so 4 plus 3, we're at 7. Then we go to year 3, we add the 3 in, we have 10. For year 4, we add 3, we have 13, and so we'll take 13, divide that by 4, and if you look at the bottom where it says table B summary of performance, the 3.25, so that's where that score comes from, and it says rating interpretation is meet expectations. We're going to perform the same exercise for financials. So year 1 for financials, there is a 3. For year 2 financials, we have a 3. For year 3 for financials, there's a score of a 2. And year 4 for financials, there's a score of a 3. So we take 3 plus 3, which is 6. We're going to add the 2 to it. That gives us 8. And we add 2, that's 10. So we take 10, divide that by 4. We get financial, a 4-year average of 2.5. That is a rating interpretation of meet expectations. We go back to organization. So year 1, there was a score of a 2. Year 2, there's a score of a 3. Year 3, there's a score of a 3. Year 4, there's a score of a 3. We do the same process. We add them up. So we know that year 1 and 2, 2 and 3 is 5. We add the 3 for year 3, that gives us 8. And we're adding year 4, that gives us 11. So we take the 11 divided by 4. And we have a 2.75 for the organization, which meet expectations. But that's not the end of the story. But we know what our average rating is for each domain. So go to the next slide. Okay, so on the next slide, this is our table C, which is our composition score and renewal determination. So when we add up when we total or we get the sum of our scores on the previous slide, where we had for academics, we had a 3.25, financials, we had 2.50, and organization, we had 2.75. That total 8.5. So the 8.5 is a performance level or meet or exceed expectations. Well, the renewal threshold says that if it is greater than 8 points, that is a recommend renewal term of 5 years. So it's an 8.5, but it's greater than 8 points. So the key is greater than 8 points. There is a 5-year renewal in this example. Okay, are there any questions? Okay, well, Dr. K, back to you.
Okay. All right. So this slide here then is supplemental to what Letitia just went over with you. So once you've looked at your points and you've determined your term length, you're going to have to go back over to that far left column. And this is where the criteria comes in. If you remember several slides back, we talked about the fact that there has to be a criteria built into the renewal application cycle. So in the case of this school that Letitia was using as an example, the school was greater than 8 points. So we're going to look first to the left-hand side. Did they meet or exceed expectations across all performance domains for their performance framework? And the answer was yes. Did they have no unresolved notices of concern or breach? And are they under any MDE imposed or corrective action plan by either us or the department? And the answer, if the answer is no, then they would get a 5-year renewal, no conditions. If the answer is yes, they are under an unresolved notice of concern or a breach, or they're under any MDE imposed improvement or corrective action plan, and they still receive the amount of points of greater than 8, they would receive a 5-year conditional renewal. Now, depending on what those unresolved notices are, what the MDE imposed corrective action plan might be, that is where your conditions are going to come from. So in terms of the new contract, there is always a possibility that a site visit could reveal something also that might end up being significant enough to include in a condition, but I am going to make an assumption that those will be few and far between. And then you can see from the rest of the criteria there on the left side, if you have 7 to 8 points and you meet these conditions, you have meets and approaches, which are not the standard built into the contract. Remember, those are meets or exceeds. So if you have meets and approaches across your domains and one or more of the following, either a notice of concern or a breach or an MDE imposed improvement plan of some sort, that's where if your points earned are 7 to 8, you would get a 3-year conditional renewal. And any of the following on the bottom there on the left, a school that received an F, you're actually just not even eligible for renewal. Any other statutory grounds for revocation or non-renewal, an academic approaches academic expectations for 4 consecutive years. That would mean that your school was a D for 4 consecutive years, and your points were less than 7. Now, so keep that in mind. Both of these things have to be true together, right? So you might have gotten greater than 8 points, but you had an academic rating. So all of these things have to be true, an academic rating of better than D, but all of these things have to be true for you to get your renewal. And then fails to meet financial expectations for 3 consecutive years, or a breach of contract terms for the charter. So I'm going to stop there for board members, committee members. If you have any questions, Letitia and I've gone through those pretty quickly. I know you've had them ahead of time, but I want to give you an opportunity to ask a question if you have
Yeah,
any there.
I have a question. So thank you for, I know that, you said you got feedback from Mississippi First and some others, and then even I think Aaron in an email, you had asked about other stakeholders, and so you sent, I'm looking, let me see, give me 2 seconds. The ones that you sent, I have a quick question, because you were missing, unless I missed it, feedback form. I see it for Legacy feedback as well as Republic, but I didn't see the one you mentioned, that Clarksdale Collegiate. I didn't receive that. Did you send that on a separate email, their feedback?
No, they should have all been on there, Candace. if not, I'll make sure you have it, but they should have all been on there.
They're on there. They're just not labeled the same way,
Yeah.
Candace.
That's correct. They're all inclusive in that original email, Dr. K, that you shared.
I thought they were all on there.
Yeah, they're not labeled, the
Cause
same.
legacy feedback, so I see one for,
Basis, Republic, Legacy, and then the other two are Clarksdale Collegiate and
Instant Impact.
yes. They're just titled differently.
okay.
And in case those didn't see the chat, there was a question raised about answering questions. And I just responded as chair of the committee that they had the opportunity to submit their feedback for consideration, and any questions, comments, clarification that they may have, they'll have the opportunity during the APA process, should this committee make the recommendation to the board to move forward with this new guidance document and the board approves it.
Thank you, Erin. Candace, did that answer your question?
It's under the basis feedback charter school, or is it
No.
under the renewal app and? I'm
I
lost.
The
don't,
ones that say renewal app and guidance, like that's their form. If you open it up, it says feedback form, and then it lists Instant Impact and it lists Clarksdale Collegiate.
it depends on their naming convention.
Yeah. So there were five feedback we received from Basis, from Legacy, from Republic, from Instant Impact, and from Clarksdale.
That's right.
Okay. Thank
I
you.
initially thought the same thing too, and then I saw that the document was saved differently.
I just dropped them in as they were saved and sent from the school. So I didn't change
Okay.
their naming conventions. Are you good, Candace? Or are you
Yeah,
ready?
thanks, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Okay. All right. So as we talked about initial feedback from stakeholders, I want to point out some common themes, and primarily those themes, and you'll see when you read through them, were for clarity and for confirmation. So I'm going to address not all of those because we did get a few responses, and we haven't had time. Some of them we got yesterday evening, so we haven't had time to go through. But I do want to take just a minute and address some of those comments that we had and questions around clarity. So first of all renewal decisions will be based on the law and the board approved policy. And every school will have meaningful opportunities to respond, 1, to the comprehensive report, and 2, to the initial draft recommendation. That hasn't changed. You'll still have both of those. I want to clarify that compliance with Mississippi Department of Education's applicable charter rules, their policies, their federal and state laws, that is assessed in the organizational framework and thereby included in the overall criteria for renewal, which is why those are referenced in the criteria that you saw on the left-hand side of that chart. It is a part of the framework that we already have. It doesn't go outside of that framework. Additionally, it is referenced in your assurance forms that you submit to us. So that is, Dee, you and I looked that up for performance organizational, that's page 19 of the performance framework guidance. So
That's correct, page 19.
if anybody wanted to look for where that comes from or the rationale behind including that, then you can look at the guidance on page 19 for the org framework. Then I also want to clarify that the scoring chart is binding and that the most recently updated guidance includes how those points are calculated and when rounding is appropriate. We had a couple of questions about rounding and whether or not that would be appropriate. Well, it will be mathematically appropriate if you're at a 0.5 and you need to round up to the next number. So that's how that will work, and that is in the new revised guidance that I don't think anybody but the committee has now. And then I've already mentioned this, but I do want to clarify again that the 90 days that someone had asked about is statutory language. And January 31 has been and remains the deadline for the submission of the school's application. Then I also want to clarify that there are no borderline cases because the metrics are very clear and they're distinctly aligned to the performance framework. So we didn't make up new numbers. If an exceeds on the framework and the academics is a 4, meets is a 3, and we kept those same values for the renewal application. The law also directs us to include an opportunity for schools to present evidence beyond the data that's in the comprehensive report, and we made sure that that is included in the application itself. Schools that have resolved a corrective action plan or a notice of concern or a breach are not going to be penalized for historical issues that were resolved. If they're resolved, then there is no need to readdress them. And then if you indicate a not applicable in a response that allows for an NA, that will not have any adverse effect. So if you are not changing your mission or vision, if you are not changing your organizational structure for your governance, if you're not changing your school's location, and you put NA on there, that remember, this is not scored like it used to be. It doesn't have a rubric. It is going to supplementally support the board's decision. The narrative itself is important to provide sufficient support, complement what we already know through the data. It is not going to be a separate primary document. It will be a supplemental secondary document to inform the decisions of the schools.
And
So
Dr. K,
yes.
hey, while you're leaning into that section, speak to the discussion we had about those particular areas being completed and they being used to make changes to the configuration or to expand, how that application is solely used for renewal purposes, and we have other mechanism in place to capture an expansion request or a governance change request or a material change request.
Yes, thank you, Dee. We did talk about that, and that also is included in a note in the application guidance. So if a school is thinking about expanding, you would want to reference that in your future plans. However, this is not the application that is used for an expansion. If you are thinking about your governance and the structure of your governance, then you would want to be very detailed in that response, but that would not require another application or a contract amendment. The contract amendment material, contract amendment requirements are in your current contract. So you can always go to those for material changes that require a contract amendment for schools that are on the call. You can always go there, and that will be, it's very clear when and if you need to submit a contract amendment request. Okay, questions on this slide from the committee? Okay. All right. Okay. So the last thing I want to do here is just pop into, and I hope this link will work and take you to, and it did. So let me get over to my other screen. So here you can see, can everybody see that okay? Thumbs up from the committee? Yeah. Okay, great. You can see this is how it will look when it's presented to the board. And you can see we have updated it to have your page numbers. Click here, it'll take you straight to page 17. We have some revised language that we've added here. I would encourage everybody just to go back and look at some revised language here. We have added in, this looks wonky because it's on a PDF, but this will drop down here. So here's where we talk about rounding. So, and you can see that we have the revised charts and the reference to rounding for clarity. We added that in as a result of some of the feedback that we've already received. So this is the chart that was in the presentation, but you can see here probably a little more clearly since it's on a separate page. And you can see the ands here and the ors here. Those are all new. You can see an example here of what Letitia went through, where this is year one for this school. They had a 4. They had an exceeds on their academic rating, on their overall performance rating for their academics. The next few years they had 3, so they were at a meets, and this was their 4-year average. This is the average going down for a composite score of 8.5. And then you see another reference to the decimal point here. And then another way to look at it. So we've added another visual presentation of the table so that you can look at them in a different way. Everybody looks at things and interprets things differently. And so having a couple of options and ways to look at it might be helpful. Same information presented in a different way. So your domains here, academic, financial, and org, which align straight to the framework. Numbers, numeric values that align directly to the performance framework. Your calculations here for your summary over the 4-year performance over time. Think about that. Your composite score here, which is what Letitia went over with you here. This is where I know the criteria is not applied here. Remember, we have to go back and look at that left-hand column where the criteria is. And then go on down. Here is the chart that we talked about, the notifications. This is very, very similar to what you have seen before. Again, where I said the 90 days is inclusive as opposed to the 14 days that was there before. This chart will look a little different. I don't know if I can drop that down or not. I cannot. But this chart will look a little different to you because we reduced the number of pages. The number of pages before were enormous, and I know sometimes folks were just adding in pictures maybe to meet the number of pages, and so this limits you. The request in the narrative, the prompts in the narrative are very straightforward, and I don't think it will take you that many pages to respond. One, you got 5 pages to respond to the performance report. These are all you've got for the academic section. So you have a total of 15 pages here to respond to the entire report that we send to you. Then you have your mission and vision. In your next term, you've got, oh, I said that incorrectly, y'all. This is from the executive summary. That's 2. And this is the response to the report using the narrative that's down below with the questions. And then the mission vision, so forth and so on for your next charter term and your proposed enrollment
And
grade
Dr.
level.
K, as they're responding, shared that we talked about the inclusion of graphs and charts. That is okay when sharing data. It doesn't have to be exclusively narrative.
That's correct. And we've already addressed that in here. So we had a question about that in one of our responses. So you see right here, it says, do not use screenshots, but rather provide charts, graphs, narratives, and explanations. You can see we've gone from your academic had, I'm going to guess maybe 6 questions before, and it's very limited down to about 2 in that section. But each of these areas give you that same opportunity to present additional evidence, again, because that is required by the law. So you can do that. You've got references here to the org help. You've got, there is one thing that we are going to go back and add in the academic section. Although it references the framework, it's not specific to the indicators, and we'll go back and add those indicators in so you won't have to go back and look for them at another time. And then let's see, future plans, your vision, mission. If you're making any changes, your fiscal plan, everybody will need to talk about that. Your facility plan, some of you will, some of you won't, and so forth and so on. So this is the note that Dee was referencing here. This has been edited so that it is more clear, where we will consider the the things that you propose. However, in some situations, it may require, you see the word may require a completed application through the expansion request or a call for quality schools. And in some situations, it will not replace the need for a contract amendment, but that will be determined on a case-by-case as needed basis. So I can close that out if I can get up here and get back to my screen.
And
then-
Dr. K, can you clarify how we would like to receive the document in a continuous PDF and how the budget would be submitted separately through an Excel file?
That's in the application directions.
Okay.
So that's in there and there are no questions about that. So, committee members, thoughts, feedback, questions? Aaron, you're on mute.
I feel, I had provided some feedback on
Mhm.
the initial draft, and it looks like most stuff was incorporated. I think I have a few typos that I caught
Okay,
in the most recent Word version that you sent over.
okay,
So I'll send those back to you.
okay.
I have two things that I want to make sure that we communicate to the board if we move this forward. And that is, and it's a discussion I think I raised up to y'all with our board attorney, the accessibility of this document. And particularly if this is posted online, just to make sure that we're compliant with those Title II accessibility issues, especially when it comes to the tables that are in here.
Okay,
And that's something I think Dylan is just going to have to look into as far as, how it's read and identified. Since there aren't any images in this, we don't have to deal with that piece, but it's those tables, I think, that can be kind of weird with that new ADA compliance.
I did run an accessibility on it. I don't know how accurate it is whenever you just run the accessibility, from your own computer, but it came out okay.
Okay.
So I don't know, again, I don't know how official that is, but I did do that before I sent it out.
The only other thing that I had a question about, and I raised it up, was with that 90-day window, and it just talks about 90 days of receiving the report. And I'm not, I just want to make sure that the timelines, like everyone's 90-day, there's an understanding of when that 90-day starts. And there's no question that, okay, they received, like, the report was sent on January 15th. They should have received it immediately or however, but they're claiming they didn't receive it until January 20th. So then people's clocks are different. So I don't know, if there's a way for us to clarify that 90 days of receipt, because that'll.
I did, and when I emailed you guys back, I did say, I made, maybe I put it in a comment, like email and or like an email confirmation and or a return receipt. We can do it a couple of different ways, but we can do it one or the other or both, unless you have another thought on how best to do that.
Yeah, we just want a way to confirm that.
Okay.
That there's that they've received it, and they don't delay notification of that receipt. I guess that's what the and I'm not sure the mechanism of them receiving that performance report. If it's like on a SharePoint that's hosted by y'all, you'd be able to know when they access the system. Which they, anyway, that was just a concern I had, just to make sure that timelines are timelines and they're adhered to.
Okay. You know, I just want to say again, our goal was really to make this as simple, clear, fair, consistent, easy, simple. I can remember early on, some of the schools were just really exhausted by the amount of information that they were having to provide. And there's no sense in the schools having to retell their story. I mean, we have the framework reports. It's supposed to be, built on performance over time, the renewal, and for them to be able to share their narrative, the things that they're, addressing now and the things that they want to address in the future. And that there's no, I mean, because we have the story, there's no need for the schools to have to be burdened by a lot of extra work. And the applications, in previous applications, there was a lot. There was a lot to it. So we were really pushing for, as predictable and consistent and fair and equitable as we possibly could, and to make sure we're in line with, best practices, and taking into consideration our, obviously our statute, but what some of our friends are doing across the sectors. And, some of our colleagues are renew or don't renew. And that doesn't seem, fair to us. So we built in, multiple options. So, yeah. So I just wanted to say that, because we're trying to be very thoughtful in how we approached it, with lots of feedback from staff and from others as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it streamlines the process. I think it's much clearer. It sets the mandates on what the authorizing board expects the charters to follow. It makes it clear there's no just room for suggestions or discretionary. It's all the requirements laid out, and the range of points earned, and the expectations. So, I mean, I think that it's a good revision to what was previously out there.
Thank you. Candace, did you have any additional thoughts or comments? You were on mute.
I don't.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Our other Candace, I know, is on here, just to make sure you're here and that you didn't have any comments or thoughts, not to influence the committee, but just as the chair, if you wanted to say anything.
No, I don't have any comments. I agree with Aaron, that I think it's a good streamline. So, but I don't have any other comments beyond that.
Thank you. All right, team. I'm looking at my team now. They've all been involved in all of these meetings, and iteration after iteration after iteration, and research and revisions and so forth. So I would love to hear from the team if you have any thoughts or comments that you want to share. Dee, I was going to say you're on mute.
Yeah, I just want to share that we did receive feedback from several of our schools, and we have been diving into the feedback and really considering what our schools are suggesting. So it's not falling on deaf ears at all.
And you saw some of that in the presentation today. We got just, most of it day before yesterday and yesterday. And so we really have dug in to what and we've tried to address some of the questions immediately and make sure that it is in the resource that we have. So, and to Aaron's point earlier, you will have additional opportunities to provide feedback through the APA process. So, any other comments from staff?
I have a good question.
Sure.
For the other board members, do they receive the same information as far as the feedback from the previous schools? Or you just sent it to the committee?
No, the committee has it. Now they'll get that for the next, when we get to the board meeting, they'll have everything then.
And this is for June, right? Our June meeting,
Yes, because we don't meet in May.
right?
So that's correct.
Right, I think Dr. Carmachar, you can probably guess what I'm gonna say. This is one of the first major projects that I was a part of when me and Dr. McDonald first joined the MCSAB over 2 years ago. And so this has been an incredibly long process to develop this new renewal process.
Mm.
And one of the things I think that I'm most excited about it is that we have had to contract this work out in the past because it's extremely complicated, and this now it can be done in-house. And not only that, schools are going to be able to very easily predict what their renewal status is going to be, and it's going to save the taxpayers an immense amount of money.
Thank you, Bree.
Mhm.
Letitia,
Mm.
did you have a thought?
Yes, I did, and you know I almost lost it. So Bree did say some of what I was about to say, but I did want to take this opportunity to thank the charter leaders for providing feedback, because that is very important, because you will have no idea of the work that we do in the office. And a lot of it is to support the schools. And we do a lot of like back and forth, like Bree said, with this renewal process. It was a lot of hours that was put into this. We ran it different ways. We saw one way wouldn't work, so we did it another way. We ran numbers, running numbers to say, okay, well, let's do it this way. Let's do it this way. But we did think about you guys. It's not like it went on, as Dr. D said, it did not go on deaf ears. And so we have put in a lot of hours, and we know that there's still additional work to do. But with your help, those items that we did not think about, we are adding those, we are addressing them. And it's, if you don't tell us, we don't know. We can't think of everything, but those things that we do know, we are putting them in. So I do want to say thank you for that. And we want to just continue to build that collaborative relationship where that we continue to understand each other. So let's continue to work together hand in hand. And as Dr. K said, we want to be clear, concise, and simple.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Jordan is our only other.
Yeah, I don't want to repeat everything Letitia said, but I would just say thank you for the feedback, and we welcome more. I assume we'll send out this revised, and it is going to be helpful to have all of your comments. We want you to have an idea of renewal as before you approach renewal, and we want you to get renewed. So we did spend a lot. We spent a lot of time, and we all had championed, the options that we could, put out there and make sure that renewal is an option for everybody. So I just feel like it's a good process so far. And if you have more feedback, we welcome it.
Thank you. Thank you all. And thanks to the schools. I started off by thanking everybody for your time, and to the schools too for your feedback. I know it was initial feedback, and we did address some of it, like I said, and I'll share the slide deck, which has the link to the most, updated version of what we have now. I know Aaron noted a couple of typos, so ignore typos. It still is in draft form. But you'll be able to see where we have already addressed some of your concerns. I want to say this, there was one comment from one operator about the narrative, and they really really enjoyed, I think, having that narrative count. But in consensus here, we felt like, based on peers comments and on our experiences and the subjectivity of what a rubric is and the likelihood of it ending up as a more, like I said, subjective response, that it could put us in another place where there were questions. And we don't want questions. We want to value the narrative because it's important. to supplement and support the board's decision. But we were hopeful by eliminating the ratings on that it would be less, I guess, cumbersome for you all as leaders, and also less worrisome, so that you weren't worried that your rating was not going to meet what you wanted it to meet based on someone's interpretation of a rubric and what you wrote. So again, trying to get to some objectivity, some clarity, and some, fairness and equity in the whole entire process is important to us. So thank you again for your time this afternoon. And Aaron, I'll turn it back over to you to close out the committee.
Right. Do we need to take a vote to make the recommendation? Okay.
I think so.
Okay, well then, having heard everything about the proposed changes to the renewal application and guidance, is there a motion to approve these proposed changes and make that recommendation to approve those changes to the charter authorizer board? Candace, looking at you. Any motion?
I so moved.
No, not you.
Oh, wait, okay.
It's me and Candace Robbins. If not, I will move that we,
Well, you're the chair of the committee. Are you able to make a motion?
the chair is permitted to make a motion, but I was hoping you'd make the motion and I'd second it.
Well, the only reason why it was one of those things we were going to bring it to the board, and it was just kind of like collectively, if we just kind of all agreed together.
Well, the way that the application committee, to move it on to the full board for consideration, we have to make them approve to recommend to the board so they can place it on the board's agenda for consideration. Otherwise, it doesn't move forward at all.
Okay, you can make the motion. I'll second it.
Okay, well then I move that the applications committee approve the proposed recommendations to the changes to the renewal application guidance and make that recommendation to the charter board.
Second, Candace Robbins.
Okay, any discussion?
I'm just making sure, and I'm just making sure if the board wanted to change, any other board members decided they wanted to amend or change some of the other things, there's still time after they kind of look at the feedbacks and other things, correct?
Yes, I mean, at the board, they would have the item as presented right now with all of the backup documentation, and we discuss it at that board meeting. And if there are additional changes, the changes would be made. We'd have to likely vote on those changes in that meeting, and then it goes out for APA. And then there's 25 days where it's out for APA if the board votes that, where they get additional comments from the public, and then it comes back again for final approval to the board, unless there's substantial changes that we wish to include based on the comments from the public.
Yeah, okay, I'll just make sure. Just a question, thanks.
Yep. Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move, Candace Robbins.
Second, Aaron Meyer. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. We stand adjourned at 2:35.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.